Some debts are measured in dollars, others are paid in blood. In the quiet heart of Briarford, a love story once admired by all would unravel into one of the most harrowing tragedies this city had ever seen. Before it was over, a husband would betray his vows, a wife would make the ultimate sacrifice, and 17 lives would be erased in a single night. This is not a tale of redemption. It's the story of how desperation can twist into ruin and how choices made in the shadows can end with the sound of a single merciless gunshot. This is True Crime's Altar, where every sin is punished, every betrayal has a cost, and every soul must answer to the truth. Subscribe, share, and comment below. Tell us where you're watching from because these are stories the guilty hoped would stay buried. Some deaths are counted in numbers. Others are written in the ruin of human souls. In the heart of Briarford, Daniel and Evelyn Mercer had always seemed untouchable. Two people bound by a love that began young, grew steady, and promised forever. They met as college students. Daniel, a magnetic and driven business major with rich brown skin, close-cropped waves, and an easy, confident smile that drew people in, and Evelyn, a quiet yet radiant literature student with warm mahogany skin and soft natural curls, the kind of woman whose eyes held stories of hope and faith. Their relationship was effortless, full of shared laughter, whispered promises, and the steady certainty that they would spend their lives together. Daniel was the dreamer, forever speaking of the future he would provide, while Evelyn never questioned his ambitions. She pictured their life clearly, a home they'd build together, his career flourishing, and her role by his side through it all. Their wedding was modest yet beautiful, with Evelyn wearing her hair in a graceful updo adorned with delicate pearl pins, and Daniel in a tailored deep navy suit. Evelyn's parents were long gone, and Daniel's family kept their distance, but the absence didn't matter. All they needed was each other. The first few years were simple and comfortable. Daniel found work in finance, not extraordinary, but steady. Evelyn once dreamed of being a writer, but instead made their small apartment a warm, welcoming space, filling it with soft colors, framed photographs, and the smell of her Sunday dinners. Daniel always told her she wouldn't have to worry about money much longer. Just a few more years, he'd say, brushing a kiss to her forehead. Then you'll have the life you deserve. She believed him completely. She never noticed the subtle changes, the tension when he checked bank statements, the way his hands lingered on his face late at night, the heavy sighs when he thought she wasn't watching. She didn't know their savings were bleeding away faster than they could rebuild. She didn't know Daniel was already sinking. It began like it often does, with small debts, unexpected costs. Daniel wasn't careless, but the weight of rent, groceries, and bills pressed heavier each month. The car needed repairs. Medical costs crept in. That feeling of suffocation grew. But Daniel never told Evelyn. He couldn't. In his mind, he was supposed to be the provider, the man who kept them safe. Admitting failure would shatter that image. Until one night, he walked into the Crescent House, not to gamble, he told himself, just to look, just to clear his mind. But temptation is a predator, and it knows when a man is weakest. Daniel had always seen casinos as traps for the desperate, but watching players walk away with stacks of cash planted a dangerous thought. What if it's that easy? He placed a small bet. He won. The rush was electric. In moments, he doubled his money. For the first time in months, the weight in his chest felt lighter. So he came back. At first, only when bills pressed tight. He played carefully, leaving after small wins. Evelyn never questioned the steady groceries, the rent paid on time. Daniel told himself this was his clever way of providing. But luck is a liar, and soon the wins turned to losses. Small ones at first, then larger. He promised himself he'd win it back the next hand, the next spin. But each loss dug him deeper. Eventually, it wasn't just casino money he was gambling. It was rent, utilities, everything. When a man trades his last shred of prudence for the fleeting high of chance, he doesn't see the cliff edge, only the promise of one more step forward. The night everything collapsed began like so many before. Daniel, dulled by too much Hennessy, walked into the Crescent House convinced he'd win back everything and more. A stranger at the table called him a coward. Pride and liquor became poison in his blood. He shoved all his remaining chips forward, everything he had left. The cards turned. Just like that, it was gone. A shadow moved beside him. The man introduced himself as Victor Kane, a tall, broad-shouldered figure with deep brown skin, salt and pepper beard, and the kind of calm menace that needed no words. "Need more money?" he asked, smirking. Daniel's head buzzed. He said yes without thinking. Victor handed him chips, enough to change a life or destroy it. Daniel lost it all within minutes. 3 months, Victor said coolly. "Pay, or you're finished." Daniel stumbled home, his mind a whirlwind. He had ruined everything, and there was no way out. Evelyn found him on the bedroom floor, shoulders shaking. When he confessed the truth, every loss, every lie, she could barely breathe. She asked the number. When he told her, something inside her cracked. They tried everything. Daniel begged his employer for an advance, denied. He asked friends, distant relatives, no help. Evelyn sold whatever they had of value, including her wedding ring. By the month's end, they had scraped together half the debt. But Victor wanted all of it.
If you're enjoying this video, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. Share and like this video. It's free and won't cost anything, but it helps and encourages us to grow and do more. Thank you for your kindness, and back to the video.
One cold evening, there was a knock at the door. Daniel's chest tightened. He knew that knock. Victor stood there with 3 men behind him, each one with sharp eyes and the quiet stillness of men accustomed to intimidation. His gaze slid past Daniel and landed on Evelyn, lingering. His lips curled faintly. He told Daniel he had 10 days. Then he handed Evelyn a small card. In a voice almost gentle, he murmured, "If you want to save your husband, you'll call me. Some predators don't chase. They place the bait in your palm and wait for the hunger to grow unbearable." That night, Evelyn didn't sleep. Daniel paced the apartment, muttering desperate half-plans that could never work. Evelyn sat at the kitchen table, her eyes fixed on the card Victor had given her. She hadn't told Daniel what Victor had whispered at the door. She knew his reaction would be pure outrage. But she also knew 10 days would pass quickly, and without the rest of the money, Daniel would be dead. On the 8th day, with her heart pounding, she made the call. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I'll do it." Victor's chuckle slid through the line like oil. "Good girl." She felt her stomach turn, but she reminded herself there was no choice. When someone convinces themselves they have no choice, they've already stepped onto the path where choices no longer matter, only consequences. The address he gave her led to Iron Vale Depot, an abandoned industrial space that now served as Victor's stronghold. Evelyn stood outside, fists clenched, breath uneven. She wore a simple fitted blouse and jeans, her hair in a neat twist out, every part of her trying to hold together the dignity she knew she was about to lose. Going in meant ending the version of herself she had always known. Turning back meant signing Daniel's death warrant. She stepped forward. A scar-faced man with deep cocoa skin opened the metal door, looked her over with a slow smirk, and stepped aside. Inside, the air was thick with smoke, liquor, and the heavy silence of anticipation. Men stood, lounged, or leaned against the walls, eyes locked on her. Then Victor emerged from the shadows, wearing a black leather jacket, his salt and pepper beard catching the dim light. "Didn't think you'd come," he said, voice smooth with amusement. Evelyn swallowed hard. "I'm here." He turned to the room. "Let's begin." The first touch was rough, unwelcome. She flinched, her breath catching, knees threatening to give way. Victor leaned close, voice low. "You made a deal, remember?" She shut down inside, retreating into a place where she couldn't feel. Time blurred. Faces became a smear of leering strangers. Some were silent, some mocking, all taking something from her. When it ended, she was hollow. Victor crouched before her. 42 men. Debts cleared. Without a word, she walked into the cold night. There are wounds now I can see, wounds that bleed into the soul until even the memory of sunlight feels like a lie. The apartment was warm, ordinary. Daniel smiled when she came in, unaware of what had happened. She gave him a small smile in return. Before she could retreat to the bedroom, the phone rang. Daniel answered. The voice on the other end was Victor's, smooth, mocking. Your wife paid your debt, Mercer, 42 times. Silence filled the room. Daniel's eyes locked on hers, the shock quickly hardening into something colder. You did what? Evelyn's rehearsed explanations fell apart. She nodded through tears. Daniel dropped the phone and stepped toward her, his face tight, not with anger, but with something worse, disgust. You didn't trust me, he said, his deep voice shaking with restrained fury. I got the money this morning. She shook her head, refusing to believe it, but his voice was bitter steel. You didn't even ask. You just gave yourself away. Daniel's laugh was hollow, lifeless. You're dead to me. Betrayal cuts deepest when it's done for love, because the wound will never know whether it came from devotion or despair. He reached for the gun he'd bought earlier for protection. Evelyn's breath caught. Daniel, put it down, she whispered. His eyes glistened with tears. I can't. The gunshot tore through the air. Evelyn collapsed, her blouse darkening with blood. She looked up at him, lips trembling, but no words came. Darkness closed in, and she was gone. Daniel knelt beside her lifeless body, his dark brown hands slick with her blood. His tears fell onto her face, but no grief could undo what he had done. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then something in him shifted, a quiet breaking that left only rage behind. He rose, picked up the gun, and walked to the dresser for his keys. Without hesitation, he left the apartment, driving through Briarford's silent streets toward Ironvale Depot. The warehouse was alive with drunken laughter when he stepped inside. Victor was at the center, glass in hand, mid-conversation. The first bullet hit his chest, cutting him down mid-breath. Silence fell like a curtain. You enjoyed my wife, Daniel said, voice flat and dead. He fired again, into the man nearest him, then again and again. Men screamed, scrambled for cover, drew weapons. It didn't matter. Daniel moved with precision, his shots finding targets until bodies lay across the floor. 17 men would never see another dawn. Blood pooled across the concrete, the smell of gunpowder hanging heavy. Those who survived fled. Daniel didn't follow. His gun clicked empty. He sat down in the middle of the carnage and waited. Vengeance may feel like justice in the moment, but it is nothing more than a second grave dug beside the first. Minutes later, red and blue lights flashed across the warehouse walls. Officers stormed in, weapons raised, shouting commands. Daniel didn't resist. One officer, a tall black man in uniform, glanced from him to the destruction. What happened here? Daniel's voice was calm, almost indifferent. I paid off a debt. The trial came quickly. The Briarford County Courthouse packed with strangers eager to witness the outcome. 17 dead made for the kind of story the city wouldn't stop whispering about. The prosecution painted Daniel as a cold-blooded killer, a vigilante who believed he could play God. When Daniel took the stand, he told them everything: the gambling, the debt, Victor's threats, Evelyn's sacrifice, and the moment he pulled the trigger on the woman he'd once sworn to protect. The room shifted uneasily as his words fell into the stillness like ash. When truth is laced with blood, it becomes a weapon, cutting not to free, but to condemn. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. The verdict: guilty on all counts of first-degree murder. The judge's sentence was life in Stonegate Penitentiary with no chance of parole. Daniel exhaled, not in relief or dread, but as though closing a chapter that had been destined to end this way from the start. Prison life wrapped around Daniel like a shroud. The silence there was heavy, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that pressed against the bones and weighed down the soul. He barely spoke, rarely looked anyone in the eye. Other inmates, most of them hardened men with their own shadows, gave him space, not from fear of what he might do, but because they sensed something in him had already crossed a point of no return. At night, he would see Evelyn in the dark corners of his mind. Her voice would come to him, pleading, breaking, and he would remember the final look in her eyes before the gun went off. He told himself it had been mercy, but deep down he knew it had been destruction. No revenge, no desperate act can ever unmake the harm. It can only ensure that the ruin is complete. The years blurred. Daniel aged quietly, his once athletic frame now leaner, his hair streaked with silver. Until one night, he simply didn't wake. The guards found him motionless in his bunk, heart stopped, another forgotten man whose story had long been replaced by newer tragedies. There was no funeral, no service, just an empty cell and another inmate moving in. Love had been replaced by lies, trust by betrayal, and hope by bloodshed. It was all gone. And in the end, nothing had truly been paid, only lost. These choices, gambling away security, trusting criminals, answering despair with violence, never lead to freedom. They destroy families, end lives, and leave nothing but grief behind. If you ever find yourself in a place where fear and desperation whisper the wrong answers, remember this: step back, seek help from those who can protect and guide you. Turn to your loved ones, to the authorities, to the people who can pull you towards safety. Because the moment you choose the shadows, they choose you back, and they will not let go. What happened to Daniel and Evelyn should stand as a warning. Love can survive hardship, but not betrayal. And no problem, no matter how heavy, is worth the cost of your humanity. If this story has reached you, tell us your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Evelyn's place? How should Daniel have acted? Let us know where in the world you're watching from, and don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us for more real stories that carry lessons you'll never forget.